when we talk about getting involved in churches, they want to know what your ministry is doing, and they want accountability. A lot of churches, especially with the financial struggles that churches are going through, they want accountability that what you are doing is having an impact. Okay? And so we need to remember those types of things. Churches on our mailing list, how do we relate to them? We need to be relating to our churches, especially in the situations that we find ourselves now with churches struggling with their finances and could drop you if they haven't heard from you. If you are not in contact and communication. I know I'm on our missions committee, and I help draft some of our policy, and we put there for our missionaries that we have a Missionary of the Week program, and they need to send in their information the week ahead of the time that they're going to share. Well, if they aren't doing that, and we want them to report back to us, we want to hear news from at least, I think it was, I forget how long, once a quarter or twice a year or something like that. We want to hear from them. And if we're not hearing from them, then there's a possibility that the church might say, well, we're going to be dropping your support, because they want accountability. And so how are we relating to our churches? Are you sending your newsletters to them? Is there a missions committee? Send it to your missions committee, yes. But I also would advise you to send it to the pastor, too. Put the pastor on your mailing list of the churches so that they know what's going on with you. So when the budget time comes around and the pastors are involved with the budgets, they know who the missionaries are in the church, and they know what you're doing. So keep in touch by that way. How about visits? Now, you all are stateside, most of you, a lot of you are here working. How often do you get to those churches? Well, you say, I'm here, my church is up in Washington State, my church is up in Pennsylvania. How do I do that? We have a thing called Skype now. We have things called DVDs, putting together little things that you can send to churches. There's today, phone call, just calling and talking to the pastor or talking to the missions committee. There's ways in which we can keep in touch now that we didn't have years ago. And so there really is no excuse for us not to be in touch with our churches in some way. We just need to decide what's the best way to keep in touch with our churches and to do that. Churches are dropping missionaries because of financial struggles. But if you keep in constant contact with them, making sure that they know who you are, I think you're going to have a better chance of doing that. Reporting back to them. It'd be good if you had an advocate in each of the churches that you have. The churches that represent you have someone who would represent you to the missions committee, to the church. And so keep them in touch, informed of what's going on. So think about, as you go through your advocate list, think about the churches that you have. Who are in those churches that you might ask to be an advocate for you, for that church as well. Find out when the church's budget is going to be done. Churches do their budgets different times. Missions conferences, the same type of thing. When are they having their missions conferences? When is their budgets due? Are you making sure that the missions committee knows what your budget needs are? Do your churches ask you for your ministry budget, your budget? Any of your?
Some do. No.
Yeah. Some do, and so it is important to let them know that you have a need. If you're low in support, communicating with the church that you have this need might help, but know when their budgets are. Because if you have a need and their budgets were set 2 months ago and you're coming with a need, it's probably not going to happen because they already set their budget. What I'm saying is you need to explain. I would never just give a church or an individual, this is what my monthly budget is. No, I would never do that without being able to sit down and explain to them exactly where the money is going and why this is what it is. So don't get me wrong with that. You just don't send that off. You have to explain that to them. That's why I said be open with the missions committee, the churches, in terms of what your need is, but be able to back up why that increase has come so that you can explain to them so that they understand where it is. Because you're right, a lot of these mission committees change. Pastors change, and so they don't know what the situation is. And they have so many different missions that are involved in there, and so each mission is different as to how they do it. So they might not even have a clue. And so if you see, I've had some pastors call me when I was back in personnel and say, hey, these people are going to Kenya. This is what their budget is. He said, we don't even make that much. Okay? And so I was able to sit down and explain why some of that was so high. Children's education, a big, huge factor for them, and be able to do that. And so that helped them to understand a little bit more why the figure was so high, because they don't have a clue about that. You have to be able to explain it. Don't just give it out carte blanche without an explanation, because that's what people will say. I don't even make that much. Then you come back and say, well, you could be a missionary. When you get to visit churches, try to spend as much time as you can. Go to Sunday school classes. Get to know people. Get them to know you. If you're going to go to visit, it might be good to let the pastor know that you're coming. We had that happen at one point. We just dropped in, and the pastor didn't introduce us. We weren't expecting it. But some of our friends and people there were pretty indignant that the pastor didn't mention us or invite, say anything to us. Well, we didn't go for that reason, but we learned, we'll tell the pastor next time we're just going to come to visit, and so that he knows about that. Remember, when we go to churches, we go to give, not to get. We always go giving them who we are, what our ministry is, updates, whatever, but we go to give. The other thing I would say is try to build a relationship with your pastor as best you can in these churches. Pray for them. Pray for them and let them know that you're praying for them.